Raffensperger responded to today's ruling saying, quote, "It's a win for taxpayers and voters who knew all along that Stacey Abrams' voter suppression claims were false." So far, Abrams has not commented on today's decision.
Senator Jon Ossoff was in town today to...
The American press, otherwise known as the Fourth Estate, has the job of bringing forth to all Americans important information that they need to know, not just information they want to know. And this information is not just about politics either. So why does the news seem to be dominated always by politics? With me to sort out some of this is a famous and former CNN personality, Rick Sanchez. He was one of the highest rated anchors in the news business, and at one point at CNN, he was producing and hosting 3 shows a day. He was the first network anchor to successfully employ social media, tweeting long before it was popular, and was the first anchor to report for CNN in both English and Spanish, and did so often simultaneously. He covered the Contra War from the jungles of Nicaragua, covered the landing zone for Marines in the war in Grenada, and covered the slums of Port-au-Prince, Haiti. And when the Twin Towers came down on 9/11, Rick was one of a handful of national reporters who reported from the now Ground Zero area as the second tower tumbled. And when Hurricane Katrina hit, he was one of the first to report live that the levees had broken in New Orleans. When Hurricane Andrew hit, he was one of the first covering that event as well, and later organized a national relief effort moving supplies and food. For this, he was honored by President George H.W. Bush and the Florida Broadcasters Association. It's worth noting that Rick came from poor and humble beginnings, from his parents who came to the United States from Cuba when he was 2, and yet he rose an American personality, an anchor, and a journalist, delivering interviews with newsmakers that have actually gone viral on the internet. And among the most notable, Fidel Castro, Jimmy Carter, Mikhail Gorbachev, Bill Clinton, and Manuel Noriega. So welcome. I'm delighted to have Rick Sanchez with us. Hello there, Rick.
Hi, Terry. How are you? Thanks so much for having me. We appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome. And I want you to know I'm a big fan of yours. I remember a lot of your coverage on Katrina. I remember on Andrew, and I've watched your rise and success, and you are really, in my opinion, one of the best anchors out there. You totally deserve the title. All right, let's get right to our topic du jour, Rick, and I know you're going to have a lot to say about this, and that is the broken news media. So let's start with this. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being terrible, just terrible, where would you put the American news media?
Unfortunately, right now, it's probably, if you say 10 is terrible, it's somewhere around 8. And I don't see that there's an easy fix for it. And I think a lot of it has to do with corporatization.
At office, and today's Iris Tao has the story, plus some revelations on what the papers may actually contain.
For a second day, still no answer from President Biden. Biden's under fire for classified documents discovered at Penn Biden Center, which is in the building right behind me. The documents were from Biden's time as vice president. They were found by Biden's personal lawyers just 6 days before the midterm elections. But the White House only admitted to it yesterday. The White House told CNN that Biden was unaware what those documents were. The outlet is reporting today that they included 10 classified documents about Ukraine, Iran, and the UK, and some were labeled as top secret.
Where's the FBI raid?
Republicans and former President Trump are saying there's a double standard, since the FBI raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago home over classified documents.
Biden took classified documents with him and held them for years and criticized former President Trump. I wonder why the press isn't asking the same questions of him as vice president taking classified documents that they were asking President Trump.
And just 4 months ago, Biden said this about documents found at Trump's home.
How that could possibly happen. Why anyone could be that irresponsible.
Democrats, meanwhile, are calling such criticism
Republican hypocrisy in its finest. What President Biden did was disclose this to the archives.
Meanwhile, an ethics watchdog group tells NTD the think tank involved here could have funding ties with China.
We have information that the University of Penn has received millions of dollars of Chinese money. We believe some of that went to the Biden Center, who knows whether there's some documentation of these classified documents that do involve China. So it's really suspicious here, and it calls for a full investigation with subpoena power by the committees.
The Department of Justice is reviewing the found documents, and Republicans are now adding this matter to their growing list of investigations. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao at TD News.
Outsourcing are a major concern to all three economies.
There are tremendous things that we can build on here at home. North America is the largest free trading bloc in the world.
We renewed our dependence, deepened our cooperation for our closest friends and allies, none closer than Mexico and Canada, to take on the biggest challenges facing the region and, quite frankly, the world.
Earlier today, the White House announced the president will travel to Canada in March to visit Prime Minister Trudeau.
President Biden says he was surprised by the discovery of government records at his old office. The president used that office when he served as VP in the Obama administration. The Attorney General has the preliminary findings of a review into this. Merrick Garland chose a Trump-appointed judge to review the findings, he said, to avoid a conflict of interest. Now Garland has to make the critical decision on how to proceed, including whether to open a full-blown criminal investigation. The president said he didn't know what they contained.
Who had the subpoena power to get the people in that we can ask the direct questions? This is serious.
This is not Mar-a-Lago, and this is not a president refusing a subpoena.
Lawyers for the White House say the documents were immediately turned over.
Longtime Trump.
Congressman Russ Fulcher, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
There's news surfacing as we speak where President Biden right now is taking some heat because of the documents that were found in the Biden Penn Center for Diplomacy, which is actually ironically located in this building that we're in right now on the 6th floor. When it comes to taking donations and influence, if you will, from the CCP, how big of an issue do you think this is?
These are things that have been, let's face it, swept under the rug. Okay? There's been a very friendly media, very friendly bureaucracies. The intelligence community has been very friendly to the existing administration. And so we don't know what the details of these things are. Even the January 6th Commission was very one-sided. And so now, for the first time, we will get another look at these situations. What are in these documents? Was it appropriate? Was it not? Was there personal gain that came out of some of these things? Hunter Biden, the laptop, all of that. It's been pushed aside. And so I think, frankly, that's one of the things that drove the election outcome the way that it did. I was surprised it wasn't a little bit more of a swing, frankly, but the American people are asking questions just like you did. Is this legitimate? Is it not? What are you going to do about it? Now's our opportunity to do something about it.
So at the very least, when it comes to these documents being found, whether or not they're on the same level of what was found at Mar-a-Lago, there are concerns that there may be a double standard in the way that they are treated versus the former president.
I don't think there's any question about it. Once again, go back to the January 6th Commission. I mean, it was very one-sided. They started with a verdict, said, okay, now we're going to go substantiate our verdict. The Biden laptop, we know for a fact now, FBI knew about it before the election and constrained information about that. We now know, thank you, Elon Musk, that that people were suppressed trying to expose that. And so with all these ingredients coming to light, of course there's a double standard. I mean, we felt that here on the Republican side, media-wise, access to information-wise, restrictions on how we communicate and censorship with some of our communications versus some of our colleagues on the Democrat side. The double standard is no secret, at least to me and to our colleagues on the Republican side.
Congressman, I want to ask you about the rules package that was negotiated by members of the House Freedom Caucus with Kevin McCarthy. Some, when the vote came last night, said that it potentially might not go through because they thought McCarthy maybe gave away too much. In the end, it did. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting because I think we've been conditioned to the Nancy Pelosi way of doing business, which is a very heavy-handed speaker. And the rules that she had with the support of her conference were very empowering to the speaker and, quite frankly, minimizing to most members of Congress. Even from what I understand, under Speaker Boehner, it was a lot more control in the speaker's gavel. But with these new rules, it kind of goes back to it was even pre-Boehner as speaker. And, frankly, I think that's just a good thing because each member has a little bit more ability to maneuver, has a little bit more say in terms of amendments, the actions on the floor, a little bit more notice when we get bills that we want to go through, especially big ones. Overall, I think is a very good thing, and we'll get used to that, I think, real quick.
Allow the city of College Park and other local law enforcement to process evidence faster in criminal investigations. Senator Ossoff helped secure the $373,000 in funding for the database. College Park PD, only the 9th agency in the state with the new tech.
And as any detective will tell you, time counts in the investigation of violent crime. And so delays in the identification of spent shell casings and the firearms used in violent crime, those delays, those can cost lives.
So this technology means that everyone across our region is safer.
College Park Police Chief Connie Rogers says the department will partner with other jurisdictions around the state in order to make the best use of that new technology.
All right, let's talk.
You're with the airport layout, and they say this was so serious that if a person gets over the fence, has access to a vehicle, they could get to the nearest runway in less than a minute. You were looking at authorized workers within a secured area of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport going into an airplane. Something way out of the ordinary occurred a few days ago. Turn around. In which this man was able to penetrate the airport perimeter, climb the steps of a parked Southwest jet, and go inside, according to Atlanta police. The trespasser came face to face with a staffer in the cockpit.
That's dangerous.
We asked a former prosecutor well familiar with Hartsfield-Jackson to comment on what happened. It started when Terrence Stewart allegedly got over a razor wire fence. According to police, Stewart got into a Delta vehicle and started driving.
You're talking about the potential of a vehicle that could probably run 40 to 60 miles an hour hitting an airplane. I don't know how much damage it would do, but it would be a lot.
Fortunately, the incident occurred overnight when few jets are operating.
The fact that he can get an airline vehicle and start moving it, or any vehicle on that property, unauthorized, back there, that's troubling.
Before it was all over, with handcuffs placed on Stewart, he allegedly had time to drive not just one Delta Airline F-150 truck, but two. The Department of Aviation Security provided a statement answering some of our questions. Airport employees followed protocol as directed and challenged the suspect to present his authorized credentials, reported him to 911, maintained a safe distance while keeping him in sight, and provided information to Atlanta police officers responding to the incident. Who knows exactly what the suspect may have been up to, but here's what he's facing: serious charges at the federal level. From Hartsfield-Jackson Perimeter, I'm Morris Diggs, Fox 5 News.
Friday, when shots rang out near the food court, 18-year-old Chesson Lacey was shot during an exchange of gunfire. He's still at the hospital. Meantime, we have breaking news out of DeKalb County. An 18-year-old was shot and killed at a gas station earlier tonight. His mother identified him as Akir Muhammad. She tells us her son's birthday is less than a month away. He was in an apprenticeship program, working to become an electrician. Cedric Bryan showed up to the Shell convenience store on Snapfinger Woods Drive after her son's friend called her.
The look in my eyes currently is, I guess, ghost. Can't believe it. The only time I believed it when I saw the medical examiner. I still can't believe it. But I'm very, very hurt.
Police say Mohammed had just walked out of the store when he was shot. His mother tells us it appeared to be an attempted robbery. No one is in police custody tonight.
Alania died. A 13-count indictment handed down by a Fulton County grand jury names 3 men in connection with the death of 24-year-old Alania Lenoir, the woman last seen at this Midtown apartment complex in late July. Atlanta police say these 2 men, Stephen Abate and Deontay Reynolds, face a number of charges, including felony murder, and now a third suspect, Nicholas Hendrickson, has been charged for his role in helping them dispose of her body. Lenoir's mother, Jeanette Jackson, tells Fox 5 she was somewhat relieved to learn about the arrest, but not surprised there was more to the story.
I'm not shocked because it never felt like, an accident.
According to Fulton County court documents, Abate and Reynolds provided Lenoir with opiates that night inside the apartment. Investigators believe when she showed signs she was in need of medical attention, the 2 men avoided calling 911 in an effort to cover it up.
Good, bad, or indifferent, she was 24 years old when they decided to take her life.
The indictment goes on to say Reynolds secured a lease on that apartment using a fake name and identity. The court documents say Hendrickson helped the 2 men move her body and lied to investigators when asked if he'd taken a trip to Alabama on July 31st, the day of the alleged crime. Hendrickson is not facing a murder charge.
I want the same thing I wanted on July 31st. Where is she? And I deserve that. And you know what? Stephen's mother knows where Stephen is.
Jackson says while Abate is still on the run, finding her daughter's body and getting justice for Alania continue to be their family's focus.
That's my baby. Yeah. And she would be doing the same. Yeah. She would be doing the same for me.
Abate has been added to APD's most wanted list. If you have any information about where he might be, give detectives a call. That's the latest here from downtown Atlanta. Joy Dukes, Fox.
Not going to let the thieves stop him from operating.
The owner says thieves stole trading cards worth more than $100,000 and were in and out in a matter of minutes.
I got this John Smoltz and I got a Chipper Jones for $3.
Mac Wells and his mom Candace stopped by BT Collectibles in Woodstock to pick up a few trading cards. Thieves hit the store over the weekend and they wanted to show the owner that they cared.
Well, we saw on Facebook this place got broken into. We've been meaning to come and haven't had our time to make it around, so thought this would be a good time to come out and show some support.
And they smashed the front door.
Owner Bob Mulligan says early Sunday morning, thieves smashed their way into his shop and went straight to the first 3 display cases, breaking the glass on each one and snatching the trading cards that were inside.
Pokemon, worth a lot of money. And then the next case they hit was our basketball case that would have Kobe Bryant rookies that were graded, Michael Jordan cards that were graded, and a mix of all the vintage cards. And the third case was full of what I call the baseball vintage cards.
The thieves didn't touch the cash register or other memorabilia, just swiped the cards. Mulligan says about 1,000 are missing, totaling almost $120,000.
Tremendous amount of money.
As a small business owner, Mulligan says it's discouraging, but he's moving forward, thanks to all the support from the community, like this special note from one of his youngest customers.
It says, "I'm so sorry that your store was robbed. Love, Grayson. And to help you out, I want to give you 2 Pokemon cards to help you get started again." You know, to have this kind of community love and support means everything.
The Cherokee County Sheriff's Office is investigating. They're searching for video that will help lead them to whoever did this. In Cherokee County, Denise Dillon.
For my organization, and because of the Black maternal health crisis, I said, what's the solution? How these women, I pulled up and this is all that's left of the tree. As you can see, the remains. They left us with nothing more than sticks and bricks. How can the dream live if we burn it down?
And I'll just make a note on that. There was a time with folks like you and I I graduated with a journalism degree from the Eric Sevareid School of Journalism at the University of Minnesota. I say that with a lot of pride because, I mean, being a journalist is a big deal, and it means that, you know, you've got your sheepskin. You wouldn't go to a doctor who doesn't have a medical degree. You wouldn't go to a dentist who doesn't have a dental degree. You wouldn't hire a plumber who doesn't at least have a certification and knows how to fix a pipes. Right. But over and over, when you turn on the TV, we see these people who have nothing to do with journalism and have probably never even covered a story in their lives, but somehow they're connected to somebody who's at the network, or maybe they're just very handsome, very
That's so true.
And they have shows. I mean, when you go down the gamut, I mean, Anderson Cooper, you know, had a reality show. Rachel Maddow had a radio show. She's not a journalist.
No,
I mean,
that's true.
I mean, even on the right, you go to Hannity. I mean, God bless him, but unfortunately, he's not a journalist. He worked his way up from who the hell knows where. So we've got all these people who are assuming these roles in journalistic capacities, but they're not journalists, and they literally have filled the airspace all over the United States. And unfortunately, that's had an effect as well, I think.
I think that's an excellent point, and it was one of my questions down the road, but we'll go on that thread now. And to wit, I would say, Rick, there are sports personalities that can dunk a basketball or play in the NFL, and all of a sudden they've got a microphone, and they're some big pro as a journalist in all of sports news. And you think, oh, really? This guy's got marbles in his mouth. He can't even speak.
The TV, I turn on some of the morning shows, and I see a guy who played for the New York Giants. I see his co-host is Bill Clinton's presidential spokesperson. And with all due respect, there's nothing wrong with being a presidential spokesperson. There's nothing wrong with Stephanopoulos. He's a nice guy.
Exactly.
Same as the guy who used to be the defensive end for the New York Giants. They're all fine people. But what the hell are they doing there? I mean, there was a time in America where we said, you know, it's a vaulted position to be able to communicate. Nowadays, in fact, I'll even go to that. Let's talk presidential spokespersons. There was a time in America. There was a time in America where the presidential spokesperson was a former journalist who had worked their way up. They worked at a big newspaper, and now the president chose them to talk to their colleagues. Today, the persons who fill that position are hacks. They are literally hacks. They are former Republican spokespersons or Democratic spokespersons or party hacks, or their daddy gave a lot of money to get it. And now I turn on the TV and it's time for the presidential news conference every day, which I used to love as a journalist. It's filled with minutia, but the kind of minutia people like you and I like. And I used to sit there. Now it's like a contest between the person that Biden picked. I don't even know this young lady who's doing the job now. I forgot her name. But just like the one before her, and they put these people there who are essentially, and I don't even mean this in a bad way, but that's what they are. There's nothing wrong with it. They're political hacks. They've come up the system. And now, again, they're feeding journalists who also aren't journalists. So when we start the conversation about what's wrong with journalism in America, we have to start, Terry, by saying, well, first of all, the fundamentals aren't there. You can't build a house without a foundation. You can't build a journalist.
Yeah, I agree. And I used to get kind of miffed when somebody would be jumping in the chair, and that's true of sports too. And I think, you know, there's somebody out there trying to cut their chops, trying to make it, doing a stand-up in the snow in some nor'easter, and he's 27 years old, and that job should be for him. And if you're not a journalist, get the heck out. But this begs my next question for you, Rick. You know, it's been said time and time again, and it keeps being shot down time and time again, that just like you alluded to, doctors need a license to do what they do. Lawyers need a license to do what they do. Engineers need a license to do what they do. Airline pilots need a license to do what they do. But here you get the journo, the journalist, who doesn't need anything. So how do you sue him when there's bad information? How do you sue him when they don't cover anything? So the question is it time for some kind of regulation? I hate using that word because I'm a free market kind of person, but what is the standard? It used to be, when I was coming up in the ranks, your credibility, meaning my credibility, our credibility, was everything. And the audience would know if I was lying or fudging or not getting on the main story. And then it was get the axe or the 9 o'clock meeting in the morning. It's like, okay, somebody's going to chew my you-know-what.
Since the October 30th elections in which Lula defeated Bolsonaro, supposedly defeated, hundreds of people have been camped out in front of the army headquarters. Footage showed on social media, revealed that hundreds of people were pouring into the building. The protesters were met with police tear gas. Brazilian-based reporters shared a video on Twitter purportedly showing the protesters storming the building.
Muita gente lá fora, pessoal. Muita gente lá fora, pessoal. A polícia não conseguiu conter o povo. Não conseguiu conter o povo. Quebraram as janelas, quebraram tudo, entraram dentro da casa, quebraram tudo.
According to LUSA, the group wearing yellow and green t-shirts and Brazilian flags crossed police barriers, climbed the ramp which allows access to the roof of the Chamber of Deputies and Senate buildings. They eventually got inside. Watch this. For criticizing COVID-19 vaccines. That's according to evidence posted by Louisiana Attorney General Jeff Landry. White House Director of Digital Strategy Rob Flattery wrote an email sent to an unidentified Facebook employee on April 14th, 2021. Landry posted the email to Twitter, which reads as follows, quote, "Since we've been on the phone, the top post about vaccines today is Tucker Carlson saying they don't work. Yesterday was Tommy Lauren saying she won't take one," end quote. Flattery stated in the email exchange, quote, "This is exactly why I want to know what reduction actually looks like. If reduction means pumping our most vaccine-hesitant audience with Tucker Carlson saying it doesn't work, then I'm not sure it's reduction," end quote. In response to the email, a Facebook employee dutifully reported back to the White House that the company was, quote, "running this down," end quote. In May of 2022, Landry and Missouri's AG, Eric Schmidt, filed a lawsuit against the Biden regime alleging that it coerced social media companies to censor content related to the presidential election and COVID. As part of the lawsuit, the court ordered the administration to hand over communication between government officials and tech companies. And from Twitter in February of 2021, after none other than Representative Adam Shifty Schiff contacted Twitter and requested Sperry be banished. Sperry is an ace investigative reporter who was the first to identify Eric Sarmayala as the CIA whistleblower behind the first impeachment show that, led to the trial of President Trump. Sperry's Twitter suspension came after Project Veritas was banned the week before, and the Gateway Pundit was banned from Twitter 2 weeks before that. The Gateway Pundit reached out to Sperry at the time, and here's what he told him about his suspension. Quote, "There were no warnings. No rules were broken. They just don't like my content because of their politics. They're trying to claim I'm a robot when, of course, they know better. Tyrants. This is the second time I've been harassed since Trump was banned. They're trying to push me off their platform and silence my voice through harassment. If they can harass and silence a professional journalist, they can silence anybody," end quote.
Right now. And McCarthy, you better start investigating really quick because it's going to come out in court. Okay? The FBI and the DHS government officials, my source, possesses facial recognition evidence that the majority of the people at the breach, at the front line, on January 6th next to Brian Samsel were all feds. And they have that in their possession and they're withholding it. And they're begging for that to come out in court. And it will. Number two, they have facial recognition information that Ukrainian Svoboda Party members connected to John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and Amy Klobuchar were sent to D.C. on January 6th. And their facial recognition exists and is in the possession of the government right now. And they're going to try to remove Norm Pattis from the case. Why? They're going to remove Norm Pattis from the case because he was about to expose, and that's all we need to do. Have me testify, right? And then have the government admit whether or not there's any evidence whatsoever as a result of my testimony from any sources whatsoever, right? Admit. Yes, we have this information, or no, we don't, because guess what? The sources will then come forward, okay, and impeach the government's testimony. Somebody has already beat you in the balls twice over, okay? And this time I got it right. It's because he was to take down the barricades, and it was reported to the FBI, and they've still covered it up. That Daniel P. Love from the Joint Terrorism Task Force, who was also in charge of social media influence operations to entrap and entice patriots to come to D.C. He wanted gunmen. He wanted really bad people because he was in charge of stirring that up because he was an expert in it. And that's what he did at the Bundy Ranch stuff. He did the same thing. Sources, method, same thing. Rinse and repeat. Daniel P. Love was about to be exposed by Todd Engel. What did the judge do? And the prosecution? They shut him down and they removed him from the case immediately. He could not even represent himself. Why? Because he was exposing Daniel P. Love, the guy that was at the Capitol on January 6th, taking down barricades.
Strong words there from Mr. Pete Santelli. We'll see how far the Republicans really... The truth went on January 6th. Down a rule the Trump administration had adopted that banned, quote, bump stocks, end quote. These devices, well, they allow people to rapidly fire multiple rounds from semi-automatic guns. In a 13-3 decision, or Circuit Court of Appeals said that despite tremendous public pressure to impose a ban, it was up to the U.S. Congress to take action. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Firearms, and Explosives had interpreted a law banning machine guns extending to bump stocks. U.S. Circuit Judge Jennifer Walker Elrod said the law did not unambiguously prohibit them. Elrod, writing for the majority, said the law also did not give, quote, fair warning that possession of a non-mechanical bump stock is a crime, end quote. Trump imposed a ban after the 2017 Las Vegas mass shooting, an incident for which the FBI has never fully explained in terms of the motive and whether the shooter, Stephen Paddock, acted alone.
They're lost. They can't cover it. They've never covered a news story in their lives, you know?
And like I said at the top in my open, it seems like everything is politics. And politics is a major arm of news. It's probably the biggest artery of news, putting it that way. But it's not everything. And yet, when politics is just banged over our head over and over and over and over and over again, no wonder we're so damn divided.
And those people are not
this is tribal now.
Joe Biden Donald Trump is not as important as we have made him out to be. Joe Biden is not important as we have made him out to be. Neither is Pelosi, neither is McCarthy, neither is McConnell. They're politicians, and most of them are on the take anyway. So, I mean, it's not like we need to become fanatics of our politicians. We've gotten to a point where that's all we talk about, that's all we cheer for, that's all we're angry at. America has taken a wrong turn by making politicians so important. These folks are not so important. You know who's important? Your dad, your wife, your son, your daughter, your family, your priest, your rabbi. That's who's important. Members of your community. I mean, get back to the things that matter in this country. Let's stop making those morons as it's so important that we want to suddenly fight over them. Good God.